So, you finally decided I'm telling the truth about being the sheriff of Red Rock, huh?
I don't know about all that, but I know you ain't the killer poison that coffee because you almost drunk it your own damn self.
In The Hateful Eight, Quentin Tarantino hides way more secrets than you might catch at first glance. The story is packed with ambiguity, and most of the big questions aren't answered directly. They're just hinted at. Sure, there's the famous Lincoln letter, which may or may not be real.
You got a letter from Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah.
But there's another mystery that's just as compelling. Who is Chris Mannix, really? Was he actually the sheriff of Red Rock?
He's a goddamn sheriff. I'm a monkey's uncle.
There are arguments both for and against his story scattered all throughout the film. Every line he says, every move he makes, you could read it a bunch of different ways. To really figure it out, we've got to look not just at Mannix as a character, but also at the historical backdrop. Who were the Manx Marauders?
Manx Marauders?
That's them. Scourge of South Carolina, Mannix's Marauders.
And how do they tie into the real events of the American Civil War? Why does any of this matter? Because how we see Mannix, as a true symbol of post-war reconciliation or just a lucky fraud, changes the meaning of the movie's ending. Is he a hero in the making, or just another con man who happened to make it out alive? And here's the kicker. Quentin Tarantino himself once gave an unexpected answer to this exact question when actor Walton Goggins asked him about it. So let's dive in. Was Chris Manx really the sheriff, or was the whole thing just a well-played bluff? To figure out whether Chris Manx was really who he said he was, let's start with just the facts. No guessing, no theories. Everything we know for sure about him comes from what we see as the story unfolds. We first meet Mannix out on a snowy road where he claims he's on his way to Red Rock to take over as the new sheriff.
Is that you, Chris Mannix?
I'm sorry, friend, do we know each other?
Not quite.
He says it with confidence.
You got business in Red Rock?
Yes, I do.
What?
I'm the new sheriff.
But here's the thing, he doesn't have any proof. No papers, no letter of appointment, not even a witness to back him up. All we've got is his word and how sure of himself he seems.
You got anything that can back any of this up?
Yeah, when we get to Red Rock.
Bounty hunter John Ruth, who's transporting a prisoner to be hanged, is immediately skeptical. And it's not just the weird circumstances.
Considering there's a blizzard going on. Whole lot of fellas walking around, wouldn't you say, Major?
Ruth knows who Mannix is.
Scourge of South Carolina, Mannix's Marauders. Erskine's youngest boy, Chris.
They were on opposite sides during the Civil War, and their history adds tension to the situation. What's really telling is that, despite Ruth's natural distrust of everyone, he'd still rather hand a weapon to Major Marquis Warren, a black former Union officer, than trust Mannix.
One thing I know for sure, this nigger-hating son of a gun ain't partnered up with you.
That says a lot, not just about how shady Mannix seems, but about how shaky his position is even among the people around him. Everything really kicks off at Minnie's haberdashery. That's where all the main characters end up, walking straight into a trap. A gang set on rescuing Daisy Demerck is already there, waiting for the right moment to strike, but their plan quickly falls apart. The blizzard, along with the unexpected arrival of Major Warren and Chris Mannix, throws everything off balance.
But you didn't count on the blizzard, and you didn't count on the two of us.
One of the key moments happens with a cup of poisoned coffee. Mannix is literally seconds away from drinking it and dying. That's when Warren says something that changes everything. Sheriff or not, he ain't with them.
I don't know about all that, but I know you ain't the killer poison that coffee because you almost drunk it your own damn self.
That realization becomes the foundation for an unexpected alliance between two men who couldn't be more different, politically, personally, and historically. Even with all the bad blood and completely opposite worldviews, Warren realizes that Mannix is the only one he can trust in that moment. And by the end of it all, both men are bleeding out, but still manage to finish what John Ruth started. They carry out Daisy Demerck's execution.
You only need to hang mean bastards. But mean bastards you need to hang.
So now that we've laid out the events in order, it's time to ask the big question. Could Chris Mannix actually have been the real sheriff of Red Rock? Let's start with the evidence that supports that idea, the little things that seem to work in his favor. Let's start with one of the first big moments. When John Ruth tells Mannix to slap on some handcuffs if he wants a ride, Mannix flat out refuses.
And I'm gonna enter my town in bounty hunter's chains, no sir.
Now that's a bold move, especially if he were just some random con man trying to hitch a ride to town. Most imposters would have agreed to anything, but Mannix stands his ground. He says a sheriff doesn't ride in chains, and the way he says it, total confidence, like a guy who knows who he is. And here's the thing, nobody catches him in a lie. Not John Ruth, who's paranoid by nature. Not Major Warren, who's a human lie detector. Not Oswaldo Mowbray, the guy posing as a hangman, someone who would probably know if Mannix were faking. Even the gang members, including Daisy Domergue herself, treat him like the real deal.
When the snow melts, we go to Mexico, you go on to Red Rock, get that star pinned on your chest.
Nobody calls his bluff. Mannix doesn't stutter. He doesn't backtrack. He calls himself the sheriff like it's a fact, even when he's talking to people who could challenge him.
I'm Oswaldo Mowbray.
He's a hangman of Red Rock.
Oh, you are?
Yes, I am.
Good to meet you.
He mentions a prisoner, Lance Lawson,
He's a fella been sitting in the Red Rock jail about a month now.
who's set to hang for killing the previous sheriff.
He's the fella who shot the fella who was sheriff for me.
He even asks to see official paperwork.
You coming into Red Rock to hang Lance Lawson?
Precisely.
Do you have the execution on his own?
In my bag.
May I see him?
Of course.
Not exactly the move you'd expect from a fraud. And don't forget, he drank the poisoned coffee. Or almost did. He came this close to dying. If he were in on it with the gang, that kind of risk makes no sense.
You finally decided I'm telling the truth about being the sheriff of Red Rock, huh?
Then there's the ending. Mannix and Warren are both bleeding out, knowing they're not going to make it. At that point, what's the point in lying? But Mannix still insists.
As my first and final act as the sheriff of Red Rock.
He's the sheriff. Why keep the lie going when death's knocking at the door? That kind of commitment makes you wonder. Maybe it wasn't a lie at all. So yeah, if we're just going by what we see, there's a lot that backs up Mannix's story. Nobody exposes him. He acts like he's telling the truth. But even with all that, there's still a cloud of doubt. And to really figure out if Mannix's version holds up, we've got to leave Minnie's haberdashery behind and take a closer look at the actual history of that time period. The Hateful Eight takes place shortly after the end of the Civil War, the deadliest conflict in American history, with over 600,000 lives lost. The war tore the country in two. On one side, the industrial North, pushing for a strong central government and the gradual abolition of slavery. On the other, the agricultural, slave-holding South, fighting to protect its independence and traditional way of life. At first, the North claimed it was fighting just to preserve the Union, but it quickly became clear, without ending slavery, that unity wasn't possible. Even if the moral message came with political baggage, the North's fight became a symbol of justice. In the end, the Confederacy lost. And with that loss came a total discrediting of everything it stood for. Now enter Chris Manx, a guy who claims he's the new sheriff of Red Rock. But he's not just any guy. He's the son of a Confederate colonel, and either a former member or at least a representative of the so-called Manx Marauders. That group was known for being brutal and ruthless, and they fought for the losing side. So here's the big question. Could someone like that really have been given a legal position of authority in Wyoming? A territory that was under Union control? Most likely not.
He's a goddamn sheriff. I'm a monkey's uncle. He ain't sheriff of nothing. The Southern Rent.
In the years right after the war, power in those regions stayed in the hands of people who either fought for the Union or had proven loyalty to the federal government. Ex-Confederates, especially those with violent or controversial reputations, were generally kept far away from any official office. Roles like sheriff usually went to trustworthy men, people who had bled for the Union or had no question marks around their loyalty. Now think about that. Does someone like Chris Manx really sound like the kind of guy who fits that mold?
I'll tell you what the cavalry didn't look kindly on. Mannix's Marauders, that's what.
If Chris Mannix's backstory alone isn't enough to make us question whether he's really the sheriff, there's another fact that makes his claim even harder to believe. After the Civil War, Congress actually passed laws that banned former Confederates from holding public office, unless they were granted a special pardon or amnesty. And those amnesties, they weren't handed out easily, especially not to people linked to violence or looting. The name Mannix, as we hear it, seems to carry exactly that kind of reputation. Now, the Manx Marauders sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? Flashy, grimy, dangerous. Almost too perfect, like Quentin Tarantino just made it up to give his character an edgy past. But here's the twist. It's not fiction. Tarantino was pulling from real history. The idea of Mannix's Raiders echoes a very real group from the Civil War era, the infamous Quantrill Raiders. This wasn't just a rough patch of soldiers. It was more like a semi-criminal gang that operated under the Confederate banner, but in reality acted like a violent mob of looters, murderers, and bandits. Their leader, William Clark Quantrill, was no hero. Before the war, he was a horse thief who also dabbled in kidnapping enslaved people, which, grim as it is, was even more profitable than stealing livestock. And then comes the wildest part. When the law finally started closing in on Quantrill, he didn't go underground. He went respectable, forged documents, took a job teaching at a rural school. He quoted scripture, taught Bible lessons, and came off like a model citizen. With his slim frame, polite manners, and calm demeanor, he looked more like a Sunday school teacher than the head of a brutal raiding party. That kind of double life? That's the blueprint for Mannix. Tarantino didn't just invent a shady sheriff. He used a real-life archetype, a man with a dark past, smart enough to slip into polite society. When the Civil War broke out, William Clark Quantrill, the real-life inspiration behind Mannix's Marauders, didn't waste any time. He threw together a guerrilla unit almost overnight, and it didn't take long for the wrong kind of people to join him. Not patriots, not idealists, but outlaws, mercenaries, and straight-up sadists.
Wrapped yourselves up in a rebel flag as an excuse to kill and steal. This ought to interest you, Warren.
These weren't men fighting for freedom. They were chasing profit in a time of chaos. The darkest chapter in their story? The Lawrence Massacre. In August 1863, Quantrill and his raiders attacked the town of Lawrence, Kansas. They slaughtered over 150 men right in front of their families. Then they torched the town, burned everything to the ground, and threw a drunken celebration in the ruins.
The fact that Erskine Mannix, little boy, would talk about anybody else's behavior during wartime makes me want a horse laugh.
Whatever they claimed about honor or patriotism, this was terrorism, plain and simple. Now, officially, Quantrill's men weren't part of the Confederate Army, but they flew the flag. They carried papers signed by Confederate officials, which made their crimes look like military actions, even though they were anything but. So now picture a quiet, Union-controlled town, like the fictional Red Rock, a place with laws, a hangman, a town that values order above all else. And into this place, we're supposed to believe, walks a brand new sheriff, the son of a Confederate officer, tied to a gang that robbed, murdered, and terrorized black communities and Union supporters. That's not just unlikely, it's borderline impossible.
You sound like you got an axe to grind against the cause.
God, renegade army.
Appointing someone with that kind of background to a law enforcement role in a northern state goes against everything we know about post-war politics and reality, and that's still not the end of it. There are more subtle red flags, smaller details in Mannix's story that make his version of the truth even harder to buy, and we'll get into those next. Let's start by remembering how we even meet Chris Manx in the first place. He's completely alone, stuck in the middle of a snowy wasteland, frozen to the bone, and pretty close to death. He's got no wagon, no horse, no supplies, and absolutely no chance of surviving unless someone helps him out. In that situation, lying isn't just tempting, it's survival. So, what does he do? He confidently says he's heading to Red Rock, where he's been appointed the new sheriff. At first, it almost sounds believable, but take a closer look, and the cracks start to show. He's got nothing to prove it. No documents, no badge, not even a letter of appointment, just his word. And in the kind of world Tarantino builds, someone's word means absolutely nothing, especially when it comes from a half-frozen stranger begging for a ride through a blizzard. Then there's something else that doesn't sit right. Mannix mentions a prisoner in Red Rock by name, Lance Lawson. So it sounds like he knows what's going on in town, but when he talks about the last sheriff, he never actually says the guy's name, just the one before me.
He's the fella who shot the fella who was sheriff for me.
That's odd. If you're really appointed to take over someone's job, especially as sheriff, wouldn't you know exactly who you're replacing? And here's one more thing. Mannix is the only one who openly laughs at the letter from Lincoln.
You got a letter from Abraham Lincoln?
Yes.
The President of the United States?
Yes.
Of America?
No hesitation, no polite nod, just a straight-up mockery of it. Why? Maybe because liars are the first to sniff out other lies. Maybe because he's been lying for so long, he can spot a fake a mile away. Now, none of these things prove anything on their own, but together they start painting a pretty clear picture. one where Mannix isn't the guy he claims to be. As the Hateful Eight nears its bloody finale, the tension hits a breaking point. Desperate to survive, Daisy tries to convince Mannix that a whole gang is waiting for her in Red Rock. And the moment they hear what's going on, everyone in Minnie's haberdashery is dead meat. But Mannix doesn't flinch. He doesn't panic. He doesn't second guess.
I got to believe in those 15 extra gang members waiting it out in Red Rock. And boy, oh boy, I sure don't.
And then, look closely at him in that moment. It's like a switch flips. Gone is the talkative, almost goofy Southern guy we thought we knew.
Well, I guess I should be plumb scared right now, huh?
His voice tightens, his eyes harden. The sarcasm is gone. He speaks cold, sharp, and direct. It's like the mask drops, and we're suddenly looking at someone completely different. Someone colder, quieter, smarter.
No deal, tramp.
Now, here's an interesting detail that only shows up in the extended version of the film. There's a scene that didn't make the theatrical cut where Mannix walks over to Joe Gage and asks for a glass of brandy.
Joe Gage, is it?
It is. Pleased to meet you. I'm Chris Manx, the new sheriff of Red Rock.
It sounds like a normal moment, but there's tension in the air, like something's being communicated without words. Suspicion, calculation, a quiet mental duel. And then comes the wink.
Thanks a bunch, Joe.
You're welcome, Chris.
It might look like a joke, but in context, it feels more like a message. I figured you out. And finally, a point that comes from outside the movie itself. The title, The Hateful Eight. Not 7 hateful people and 1 decent guy, just 8. So, can we really believe that among all these liars, killers, and backstabbers, there's one honest-to-God good man? That feels too clean, too optimistic. And that's not Tarantino's style. Because if Mannix really is the new sheriff, then the ending suddenly turns into a kind of moral fable. 2 enemies from opposite sides of the Civil War join forces to carry out justice. Brutal justice, sure. Bloody justice, definitely. But justice all the same. It's almost a Tarantino-style happy ending. Almost. But here's the thing. Tarantino doesn't deal in black and white. His world is messy, dirty, full of moral gray areas. And in that world, it's hard to believe that one of these characters is just a good guy who got caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time. So the question still stands. Who is Chris Mannix? A real sheriff or a masterful liar who played his part all the way to the bitter end? After weighing both sides, we're left with a question that doesn't have a clear answer. On one hand, there's logic and history. Wyoming, a territory under Union control, would probably never appoint the son of a Confederate raider as sheriff, especially someone linked to a group that many Northerners saw as flat-out war criminals. Mannix's background would have been a major red flag to anyone handing out badges and authority. But then, there's the movie itself, and in the film, no one, not a single character, ever calls him out as a liar. Not directly, not even subtly. He never slips up, never dodges, never acts nervous. Even when talking to a guy pretending to be the hangman from Red Rock, Mannix stays calm and collected. That matters. He doesn't hide. He doesn't seem scared of being found out. He acts like someone used to being in charge, someone people are supposed to listen to. So what's the truth? Here's my take. Mannix is the sheriff, just not in the official sense of the word. He probably didn't go through the proper channels. He didn't win an election. He didn't get a formal appointment with a stamped letter and a handshake. But at some point, he became what he claimed to be. Maybe someone in Red Rock just said, "That guy seems to have his act together. Let's make him sheriff." Maybe he faked the paperwork. Maybe he got the job through a favor after the last sheriff was killed. Maybe no one bothered to check. Out in the Wild West, especially right after the Civil War, stuff like that happened. The law wasn't always what was written down. It was what actually worked. In that kind of world, someone like Mannix could easily step into the role just by acting the part long enough. So maybe he started out as a fraud and simply became the role. Maybe he was the right guy at the right time. Not a good man, not a clean one, but someone who could make a choice. And in the end, carry out justice. He's not a sheriff by the book. He's a sheriff by circumstance. And honestly, in Tarantino's world, that might be the only kind of sheriff that ever truly exists. At first glance, it almost feels like a breakthrough. A black former slave and a white racist find common ground and deliver justice together. But if you dig a little deeper, it's clear. This isn't a story of understanding. It's something harsher, something more honest. It's not about two men coming together because they've grown. It's about two liars stuck on the same side because, frankly, they have no other choice. Marky Warren is a man who was freed, but not really. His freedom means dying in someone else's war and constantly proving his worth with a letter from Abraham Lincoln, a letter he made up. Why? Because without that lie, no one listens.
The only time black folks are safe is when white folks is disarmed. And this letter had the desired effect.
Because truth, in his world, doesn't matter unless people want to hear it. His lie is his shield. Chris Mannix? He's the son of a Confederate, raised on the ideals of slavery, and yet somehow ends up claiming to represent the law in Union territory.
'Cause when niggas are scared, that's when white folks are safe.
How? Probably the same way Warren got by, not through truth, but through necessity. Maybe he tricked the system, or maybe the system let him. His truth is just as flexible, just as performative, and that's why in the final moments, when Mannix asks Warren to read the Lincoln letter again,
Hey, can I see that Lincoln letter?
it's not some heartfelt gesture. It's one liar appreciating the craft of another. They both know the letter's fake, but it works, just like their own lies have. That letter becomes a symbol, not of real freedom, but of how stories are built, how you can turn a brutal, bloody reality into legend if the wording's good enough, how a nation can be sold a feel-good version of history, all freedom, honor, and noble sacrifice, and printed in schoolbooks like it actually happened that way.
And it's men like you that will make a difference.
And maybe that's why Warren doesn't tear it up. He lets it live, because sometimes a beautiful lie is all we've got left.
Oh, Mary Todd, that's a nice touch.
As you can see, there's no clear-cut answer to the question, was Chris Mannix really the sheriff? We've looked at the theories, weighed the facts, and even dug into the historical context. I've shared my take, but the truth here is probably just as layered and messy as the film itself. What's funny is Walton Goggins, the actor who played Mannix, had the exact same question when he first read the script. He went straight to Tarantino and asked, "So, is he actually the sheriff?" And you know what Tarantino said? "You decide, just don't tell me." That, right there, says it all. Tarantino didn't hand us answers. He handed us a riddle. And now it's up to us to decide what version we believe. Do we buy into the idea that enemies can unite for a greater cause? Or do we see it all as a twisted performance, where every character wears a mask? That choice doesn't just change how we see Mannix, it changes the whole ending. Maybe it's a tale of vengeance wrapped in a classic Western, or maybe it's a dark, cynical satire about American history, where the truth's been buried under layers of lies for a long, long time. Now it's your turn. Who do you think Chris Mannix really was? Drop your theory in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And let me know who you want to see next. The mysterious Joe Gage, Bob the Mexican, Old General Smithers, or maybe Daisy Domergue herself. You decide. If you enjoyed this breakdown, give it a like and hit that subscribe button. It really helps. And if you missed the previous videos on Warren, John Ruth, or Mowbray, links are waiting in the description. See you next time. And remember, don't believe everything you hear, even if it comes with Lincoln's signature.